So talk to us about VectorVest. How did this come across?
I was in London 7 or 8 years ago, and I was bored on a Saturday afternoon. It was raining, and I saw an advert on the internet from VectorVest. They were having a seminar in a hotel in Gloucester Roadway. So I trotted down there on a Saturday afternoon, and I signed up for a 5-week trial of VectorVest UK. I was so impressed with the darn thing that on the same trip I got on a plane to North Carolina and I sewed up the agency for VectorVest South Africa. I started off VectorVest South Africa, and I built that up into a reasonable size of a company. My son now helps me run it. Very interesting story, because my son was out of school, he didn't have a job, and he was lazing about home. So he helped me with VectorVest South Africa, largely on an admin basis, sending out emails and all that sort of stuff. He got so interested in the stock market, I gave him a small amount of money to start trading, and he produced a track record. He took that track record to a hedge fund, and he's now a portfolio manager in Johannesburg with a heap of money under management. He's only 25.
That's amazing.
He still helps me with VectorVest, and in fact, Saturday week he's doing his very first VectorVest presentation in front of quite a few people in Johannesburg. VectorVest was being run in the UK at that stage by a fellow called Simon Campbell, and Simon started up his own media company and wanted to focus on that. So VectorVest asked me would I like to run VectorVest in the UK, and I've been doing that for the last little while.
What does VectorVest do?
Well, it does what I said earlier. It finds automatically shares that are undervalued, so it puts a valuation to every share in the London stock market every evening, a very robust valuation. It puts a number to earnings potential, it puts a number to earnings safety, and it puts a number to the general market. And when a computer gets a number, it can scan through the whole database, all 2,200 shares, and in fact find shares that suit those criteria. It's a massive toolbox full of tools. I use it very simply, and I want to try and find shares that are undervalued, and I like to see a share that's trading at least 20% underneath the VectorVest valuation. That seems to work. That's growing its earnings aggressively and reasonably safely. There hasn't been many surprises or earnings misses over the last few years. That's rising, and again, I scan for a market that's breaking above a 55-day high, for example. And then I want to be very conscious of when the general market is rising.
Now, within VectorVest, there's this term VST. Could you tell us more about that?
That's the master indicator called value, safety, and trend. So we put a number to earnings potential, which is called relative value. We put a number to earnings safety, which is called relative safety. We put a number to the trend, which is called relative timing. And then Bart Toledo, who's the founder of VectorVest, who's got a PhD in chemical engineering, 26 years ago, he put those two numbers together into the master indicator VST. And as a default, all of the shares in the London stock market, any stock market, are actually sorted by VST. You can sort them by whatever you wish, but the default sort is by VST, and that finds the winners. Now, we have another default sort called YSG. Now, when you're old and grey, you may be interested in yield. A long way to go, I know. Then you could sort the shares by yield, the dividend that it pays, the safety of the yield, and the growth of the yield. And some of our conservative searches, we actually look at a mixture of both. We actually sort the shares by VST, which will give capital growth, and YSG, which will give dividend growth. And that will find shares, for example, the shares that Neil Woodford has got in his portfolio are very much shares that can grow their share price and pay a dividend and grow that dividend. So it finds Neil Woodford type shares that he would have in his equity portfolio.
So there are lots of different packages out there that are available for people. What's the unique selling point for your software?
All those packages you see out there, most of them, 90% of them, 95% of them are technical analysis packages, and some exceptionally good ones. The VectorVest edge is that we put together the fundamental position of a company with the technical position of a company, with the technical position of the overall market. And when the fundamentals are good, when the technical picture of the share is good, and when the technical picture of the overall market is good, when I can tick those three boxes, then I can simply make better decisions. Decisions that are going to make money more often. In other words, the hit rate is going to be better. But very, very importantly, that those shares can, when they break, they will break out of the blocks fast. There's two types of capital. One is the money and the other is the emotional capital. And if you've got a share that breaks and hangs around there and does nothing for weeks on end, that would drive you to drink if you needed any extra motivation. You want a share that's going to break and break fast, and when it does break, it keeps on going. When you put the fundamentals at your back, and remember, 99% of all those smart youngsters in the city, not a pimples in sight. All those youngsters in the city will be looking at the fundamentals. That's going to drive the market. So simply by putting both things together, the best of both worlds, we can make better decisions.
So can this be used as a black box trading system then?
It could be used as a black box trading system. I don't do that personally, but there certainly are black box trading systems, and many of the VectorVest guys in the US, it's a US program, use it as a black box system. And the genius thing that I spoke about can be automated, and in the US they've automated it with a broker, so it goes straight through to a broker. We haven't done that in the UK as yet. In the UK, we are the only company that, in fact, markets investment education and investment software that's authorized by the FCA. Okay, and we are authorized as a media company, and for us to get in bed with a broker, we would have to upgrade our level of authorization, and we haven't done that yet.
When would be the moment to act or ignore signals from VectorVest?
If you got a signal from a share breaking up and the general market was breaking down, then you wouldn't be ticking all three boxes. But we got a signal from VectorVest after Mr. Trump was elected in November. It's a very difficult signal to take. The general market started up. The good shares started to break up the page. It looked like an awful time to be anywhere near a market, but it's always like that. We had two, what I call investor cycle lows last year. One was in the middle of February, and the other one was in the middle of November. Now, in the middle of February, there were people splitting their wrists. The market had sold off. Yellen was saying that she was going to put up rates 3 times during the course of the last year. She backed off from that, and the market ran very, very strongly from the middle of February. So it always looks awful when it's the right time to get aboard. VectorVest maps that out very well in terms of price action of the overall market and beautifully by the breadth of the overall market.
BT shares just slumped by 20%. Do you think there's anything out there that's a secure option now?
Well, there is risk everywhere, and all we can do is to try and reduce that risk. For example, BT hasn't ever shown up on VectorVest in terms of an undervalued share that's safely growing its earnings. I haven't seen it in the last 6 years whatsoever. But there are shares that are significantly undervalued, that are trending upwards, and where there is very limited risk to your capital. That JD Sports has been a great example. It's starting to get on the expensive side now, but we still believe that there's a little bit more on the upside to come. At VectorVest, we have a methodology called worry-free investing. And in worry-free investing, we actually don't sort the shares by VST. We sort the shares by relative safety. And this brings those shares with the best record of making money safely to the top of the pile. And that particular trading system, we've tested it in the US going back 25 years, and it's produced an 18% growth over the last 25 years, and with very, very limited trading. And we've tested it with similar results back over the last 10 years in the UK. So yes, by all means, if you resort your shares by relative safety, then you're going to actually reduce the surprises enormously. But by doing that, you're probably going to reduce the returns as well.
So people would be saying, if VectorVest works so brilliantly, why are you selling it? Why don't you use it to invest yourself or sell to hedge fund users?
Well, I think that I do use it to invest myself, but nevertheless, if you're right, I think that if you tick those boxes, you can be right on VectorVest 75 to 80% of the time. That means that you're wrong 20 to 25% of the time. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
On the next trade, you don't know whether this trade is one of the good ones or one of the bad ones. And getting your mind around that is what this business is all about. Now, an 80% hit rate, 75% hit rate is quite good. But most people out there, when they have got one losing trade, they say, stuff this for a game of soldiers, and they leave and they look for something else. So very, very few people can get through 2 losing trades in a row. If you can do that, then with VectorVest you can print money. And it is used actively at the institutional level. But the institutional guys have got Reuters and Bloomberg that they pay, what, £3,000 a month for? Our product is £44 a month. So we're giving institutional information at 2% of the price.